Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Real World Productivity Podcast. I'm Adam Moody, and today I'm talking with Sydney Wong, entrepreneur and co-founder of VenturX and author of How to Have a Good Day, available now on Amazon.com, about her background and experiences. So we want to get a deeper look into her approaches to problems with her very unique and awesome background, as well as the solutions that we can hopefully all put to use based on that. So welcome, Sydney.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're just going to jump right in. I love doing this and just hitting people with this first. We talked about this a minute ago, but if you could just share so we're all on the same page, a little bit about yourself. You know, you can go back to your childhood if you really want to go deep, or just start when you where you feel it might be helpful to everybody.
Yeah, sure. So a few years ago, I got into entrepreneurship. I have been working from home for a few years before that as well in tech. But going into entrepreneurship was really from my trip going to San Francisco. So I had a friend who said if I was very interested, then I should go to San Francisco to learn more about tech and startups. So I did, and I flew there on a one-way ticket, and then I moved in with him. I felt like that was an invite, so I took it as an invite. And then I came back here to start my first company, which is helping entrepreneurs get connected to investors, then became an investor myself. So I run my own angel fund here in Canada. And then during quarantine, you know, I've been seeing that a lot of my colleagues, whether they're entrepreneurs or investors, or even just people who have, you know, their regular 9-to-5 jobs that were moving into quarantine, were really going through a lot of struggle. So I then wrote this book underneath a pen name called David Adams on how to have a good day. So it's everything from productivity to, you know, mental health and awareness and everything in between. So I'm so excited to be sharing that with you today.
Gotcha. Okay, and I think you mentioned it, but you said you came to San Francisco. Where were you coming from?
Canada. So I live in Montreal, Canada, which is where I am today.
Oh, okay. So full circle. All right.
Yeah.
And then I've got to know too, pen name. What's going on there? So.
Yeah, so I was doing some research that, you know, a lot of people do use pen names. And the funny story about this particular pen name was that after discussing it with my team, we just came up with, you know, David Adams is a very general name. Yeah. It turns out that at Amazon, there is another real David Adams. And so we had to then disconnect our accounts from his actual history, because he really is an author. So we had to like go through Amazon tech support and disconnect our account from his because our names were the same. And yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get flagged, we're gonna get taken down. And so we had to go back and forth a lot with my team and with Amazon. So thank goodness that was fixed, because if you get flagged, you're just never gonna be on again.
Yeah, well, there you go. So this podcast episode is going to be some good book tips here. So yeah, make sure your pen name is not tied up with someone else. That's
yeah,
awesome.
Don't pick up J.K. Rowling, you know, or just stay away.
So you've got quite a bit of experience. So I probably know the answer to this, but I'm asking you anyways. Have you had some sort of formal training or education on productivity or time management, or was it all just on-the-job training for you?
Yeah, so I always find that experience learning is absolutely the best. So I come from, you know, an MBA background, a business background. I did my bachelor's here in Canada at McGill, and then I did my MBA in Paris, and then I came back to Canada to work in corporate and everything. And at the time, you know, everything was really manageable. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, and you are for the first time, it's kind of like going away to college. You know, you go away to college, and you don't have anybody like giving you these rules the same way. So entrepreneurship, very similar. You're going to this new world where you don't have anybody telling you, okay, well, you have all of these different tasks to do. I mean, you do, but the best way to actually get through your day is to know what are the best kinds of productivity tips that work best for you. So that's why in the book, we dive into a lot of different kinds of, you know, character traits and research. So then you can always find something that best matches you. And I have tried all of them personally. So became a night owl, became an early bird, everything in between.
Outstanding. All right. Well, then this follows on naturally. Then I'm really curious, what is your normal routine like? Because we hear about, and I especially talk a lot about routines and the importance of them. But I'm curious, what do you specifically do now that you've tried all of this stuff?
Yeah, so one of my favorite authors is Tim Ferriss, 4 Hour Work Week, right? Very
Hmm.
famous author. And going through all of his different interviews and everything, I've also adapted some of those into my routine. So that's what gave me inspiration. So in the morning, I wake up at 6 a.m., which in Montreal, just so you know, is dark. It's dark as night.
Yes.
I live here and it's winter most of the year. So it's it's dark for several hours. And then I would journal and read. So I would usually probably read Tim Ferriss or Malcolm Gladwell's, what I'm reading right now as part of my quarantine goals,
Okay.
and journal for however long. So I write what are the two biggest things that I need to do today. So then the rest of my day becomes obsolete or easier. So if I only had to pick two things, I can't pick like a team meeting or something that you're automatically going to do or go
Yeah.
to. You can't do that. Aim a little bit higher. And so two things you actually have to do and get accomplished. And then I also plan what I'm going to do in my breaks in between as well. And then so that is basically what my morning routine is. If it's not too cold, which it is now, I would go actually outside to do this. And then I was out so early that that the stock the people who like stock grocery stores and stuff,
Oh
their
yeah.
trucks come in at the same time and they're like right where my table is. So they see me every morning and they also say hi and they ask me how I am. It's very nice because I'm the only one there alone in a winter toque and jacket because it's cold. And so, so that's my morning routine. And then in the evenings, what I do is that I take a bubble bath. So I got this from Ariana Huffington, the founder of Huffington Post. The idea of water washing, your day away is so appealing to me. And then also recently to help me sleep better, I got one of my favorite things is a weighted blanket.
Yes.
So it feels like there's so much weight on you. Mine's about 15 pounds. And I also have a cup of night drink, which is apple cider vinegar, honey, and I pour hot water in it to make it kind of like a tea. And then I also read and journal again to kind of close out my day. So those are my morning and night routines because I'm a true believer in that success comes from your systems, That's really what's making you successful is how strong your routines are and what they're made of.
Definitely, 100%. I'm a big fan of consistency is key. I'd rather have an okay routine that I can do every day instead of aiming for something crazy that, I fail at half the time. So yeah,
Exactly.
that's interesting. So I like what you said at the beginning there with starting, you're saying, well, I kind of, I took from Tim Ferriss and I've, taken these, and I think that that's good. And I want to circle back to that because I know a lot of times we get hung up on like, I need to be original. I need to do this. I need to do that. And there is a bit of that, right? Because you do need to customize to yourself, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You can say, man, there's so many good pieces of information out there. I just need to scan them, try them, and then take the best, leave the rest, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So try it enough times to see what the difference is, and then just write a reflection. I really like seeing things on paper. Write a reflection on how that changed you in a positive or negative way, and then adapt from there. And it will become original along the way.
Yes, definitely. And I like what Sydney said there about writing it down. I'm moving more and more digital. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who's alive and listening to this in 2020 or 2021. But just the act of having to focus and concentrate enough to write something down, I don't have the studies in front of me, but I looked them up once upon a time. There is actually something there beyond just liking it. It actually adds more benefit. So I think that that's a good one too, whether or not it's on a whiteboard and you wipe it off or just putting it in your journal. But I totally agree. And I know a lot of us tend to get wrapped up in the digital side, but there's something to be said for that physical act.
Yeah, absolutely. I am sometimes desperate looking for paper too. There was this one time where I was in a co-working space or a library. I don't remember which it was. And I just needed to write down my ideas before I forget them. And so I even took like recycled printer paper because it was the only thing I could find. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep this, except it was like this big, the biggest thing. So I had to fold it up too. And it really does help no matter where you are.
Gotcha. Well, I like the bubble bath idea too. I've got to say something. So the last episode I believe I published was Zeb Evans, the CEO of ClickUp. And I talked to him and he said, yeah, like I think it's his morning routine. I'll have to go back and check, but that's interesting. So now this is two people recently that are talking about baths. So I've really got to pay some attention to this, I think.
Yeah. It's
All right.
really good. It's really good. And it really does help slow down your day and your breathing and everything too.
I like it. I think just the physical act too of like, what are you doing in the bath? Like, well, you're probably sitting there. Maybe you can journal or read, but like, it's not some frantic thing. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say like, man, I'm in a hurry. I'm gonna go take a bath. Like that doesn't happen.
That's very true. That's very true.
That's cool. Okay. So moving on from that, now you talked a little bit about your history. You've got a lot of experience worldwide in different industries, which I'll touch on again. You've got some amazing history in automation, CRM type stuff. But a lot of this is taking some risks, right? People don't just go to Paris to study. Like that doesn't just happen, right? You don't just fly to San Francisco and start meeting people. So I know you believe that others should be less risk averse or more, I guess, putting themselves in positions where they can take some calculated risks. So I guess I'm just going to open the floor for you if you want to talk about that, because eventually I want to move it into how do you think people can apply this in their own lives in like actionable ways, but how do you feel about risk in general?
So, so taking calculated risk is very personalized to each individual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, also, it helps you build your confidence as a person, or especially as an adult. The more risks you take, the more you get a little bit out of your comfort zone, which also a little bit is just relative to who you are.
Mm-hmm.
The more confidence you will have in taking bigger and bigger risks over time. So, some of these things are just based on blind trust, is uncalculated. And some of these things really are based on calculations such as investments, ROI, what is your potential as an investor, how big the market is. So all of those things had, math behind it. And then other things just have like intuition. So for a long time I think I started when I was like 23 or something,
Mm-hmm.
I was part of couch surfing. And that is a huge risk because you're like putting your whole fate into strangers' hands, right? Like all the time. And so what it turned out was that what it gave me was a remarkable life experience that I would never get anywhere else in the world. I would never be able to trade it for anything. I'd never be able to buy it, no matter how successful you are when you're older, no matter what you have, you'll never be able to get that kind of a thing back. And it also helps you build your appetite for risk as a person when you did it, as an adolescent or as a young person or as a student, whatever it is. And so being able to have these global experiences you wouldn't have otherwise, a part of it really is just saying yes when you have a great gut feeling about it. So saying yes to these different couch surfing opportunities, or when your friend gives you like, let's say a last minute ticket to go somewhere, you're like, yes, I'm going to go do that. Or, let's say you have a friend who invited you to go to San Francisco and just stay there forever until your visa tells you to come back. Also a great risk, but something that is something I would never trade for anything else, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too. You said trusting your gut or saying yes when your gut tells you it's right, because you're right. You can't weigh everything quantitatively all the time. And it's enough sometimes to say, okay, if you do have numbers, use them by all means. And I think a lot of us, both me and you and anyone probably listening to this, that's kind of ingrained. But yeah, sometimes it's not there. And sometimes you have to add in the, how do I feel about this? And I think developing that and acting on it is a very wise advice. So really like
And if
that.
you like writing things down, just write down what's the best case scenario that could happen versus the worst case scenario that could happen. A lot of the times the worst case scenario is just like, okay, my day will just be like today.
Yeah.
And then you can weigh that.
Yeah, or I had started something I called my fears book, was like when I have these thoughts where it's like I start to go negative and it's like, well, just write it down. And then every quarter I go back and I look at that and like how ridiculous the brain, because the brain is meant to protect us, part of it, and that's good. It's imagining these horrible scenarios, but it's like, well, the meteor didn't crash into Earth. We're okay. My clients didn't all leave me in one day, all these things we think about. And then you just start to see like, oh, wow, this is pretty ridiculous. Like the downsides are generally pretty low. The upsides are much higher than we think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Our brain is always there to try and protect us, but it protects us from like a whole evolutionary standpoint, right? From when we were like, the first humans, and some of those things may not be relevant anymore.
Definitely. Yeah, 100% agree. So what do you think people could do to maybe push themselves out of their comfort zone on kind of a regular basis? And I realize this, like you said, this is very relative.
Yeah, absolutely. So so there's a few challenges that I absolutely love. If you've ever seen this TED Talk, If you haven't, I really recommend it. If you've
Mm-hmm.
seen it, watch it again because it's great. It's called 100 Days of Rejection. So it's one of my favorite TED Talks. It's so funny. It's from a man named Gia. So he went through a whole bunch of exercises to actually help him be more confident and help him be more fearless just in everyday scenarios. So all of these challenges are absolutely absurd. You would never do them knowing, like if you just grew up, here, understanding you would never do them. So some of them would be asking, instead of for a Coke or a Sprite refill at McDonald's, you went there to ask for a burger refill to get another free burger. And it was so funny. And then the other one is to be a Starbucks greeter. So Walmart has a greeter.
Oh my gosh.
How strange would it be if you volunteered and asked them if it's okay to greet all their customers for no reason, as though you were a Walmart greeter, but this would be at Starbucks. And then the other ones would be like, if you can have like, what was it? Like go to a real establishment like a Starbucks, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and ask for a discount off your coffee for no reason. So these were all of these. One of them was, can I walk your dog? But you can't tell them why. Just like, can I just take your dog from the park and walk with it, just around?
Yeah.
And yeah, so all of these were these challenges. He also has a website full of other challenges. So I actually did this exercise with a couch surfing friend of mine a few years ago, and we filmed each other doing it too. It was really funny. And, and the look on the McDonald's employee's face, for example, when trying to like figure out what is a burger refill, it's hilarious. So these are great exercises. I highly recommend you try a few, because if you did all 100 of them, you never know how far you can get. And so I think the most ridiculous one was when he was talking about asking Krispy Kreme to make him donuts in the shape of Olympic rings. That was my favorite thing ever. I don't even know how you would do that, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Yeah, the inner introvert in me, maybe the outer introvert is like running away scared. But at the same time, like I get this, like just trying to think, first of all, everyone should go check this out. I'm definitely going to go watch 100 Days of Rejection. I have not seen it, but I recently got a kayak. And so I was looking around on Craigslist because I'm like, oh, I want to do some sea kayaking, but I'm not ready to like, just full in invest. I was like, I'm going to dip my toes in the water. So I'll just get a used kayak. And I went down and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be the guy who shows up with not enough money. I'm not that person, but like, I'm going to ask for, if they can make some sort of a concession. And I totally failed, but it was in my mind. I didn't do it. He was just this really nice old man, gave me a great deal and ended up throwing stuff in for free that I didn't ask for. So I was like, you know what, I'll just take this and go. But yeah, I was like, that stuff, a lot of times you don't know what you can do until you ask. And it doesn't have to be ridiculous. We just get so used to getting what's put in front of us.
Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite business professors at McGill always said, the worst that somebody can say to you is no, right?
Yeah.
And so what's on the other side of fear? It's probably just a no, and you're going to be fine. You're going to live on with the rest of your day, and it will be okay.
Yeah, I've seen the same thing too, time and again, on whether it's salary negotiations or bringing clients on in business, and just like what feels crazy until you've done it. Like you should add 50%, to your rate as a freelancer, and like people are like, "What? That's crazy." It's like, no, it's not. Like one, you're going to get paid more, and two, people will pay it. I mean, assuming of course you've got the experience, you can back it up. But I was like, that stuff happens. And recently I've had some friends doing salary negotiations for new positions and just talking through that. And it's like, yeah, it's like, so long as, again, you feel like you have to believe you're worth it. Don't just go out there and be asking for stuff you shouldn't have. But, once you get past that hurdle, and feel like you're worth it, it's just a matter of asking and justifying. I was like, other people aren't going to do this for you.
Yeah. And other people aren't going to conquer your own fears for you either.
Yep. Very true. Very true. All right. Well, we talked about this in the beginning a little bit. So your book, How to Have a Good Day. Can you tell us a little bit more about this? Obviously, people should go read the book if they want to find out all of it. But, I get it from the title. But can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah. So the book, like I said, it was written during the first quarantine, and it was for, people who were going through a lot of things during that time period as well, whether they be entrepreneurs or 9-to-5ers or students that were just then shifting to a regular let's stay at home forever kind of vibe, right? So what we call the new normal. And there's a variety of different kinds of techniques and how to structure your day in a very productive way, but a very satisfying way too, to really help hone in on that mental health. It's a very easy read. It's only about 50 pages, and it's available on Amazon, US and Canada.
Very cool. I was just flipping through it. I've got to go and I will be checking this out. But I guess the thing I can say right now is it's got very good reviews. So everyone should go and check that out. All right. Well, cool. I will definitely take a look through that and we'll be back in touch. But through your experience, you've had to have had some experience with managing teams. And I think that this is something that comes up a lot. I know for myself, both starting out, I used to be an engineer, then working with small teams and growing teams. What could you share in your experience about that, especially kind of the small business or entrepreneur, kind of solopreneur moving into a team type of role? What has your experience has been there?
Yeah, so I liked, like everything else in my life, like to keep things to be productive and efficient. And so like right off the bat, we have a team meeting every single day with our different departments. So the status meeting for marketing and sales on the business side, for example, is at 9 a.m. Our time. We have a scattered team, which means that we actually have people in all different kinds of time zones, and we always had that. The first developer that we had on our team was from Albania, and we had to like schedule a time to make sure that the team has everything that they need. They know what everyone else is doing. They're able to be there to answer questions for each other, and they know if you're in engineering, then you will have a demo day as well every 2 weeks, so you know what you're preparing for. Being able to work together remotely and everywhere is super challenging for people who don't have as much experience managing teams. So I always recommend having a very structured schedule, having things listed and agendaed in a very organized way, and making sure that you are available enough to answer questions, provide extra training, and those kinds of things. Because when you are remote and you are managing a remote team, you lose a lot of that non-verbal communication, right? So you can't really see if somebody is struggling. You have to really make sure that they are asking you, or you have to, again, go back on your intuition and being like, hey, this person is new. They probably don't know how to create this thing. So let's set up a specific training session for this in their time zone, and make sure that, they have all the tools that they need, and they're not just like lost and then demotivated, right? Because when it comes to being lost and demotivated, way easier to do that in your home office than it is in a regular office.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point. And something I've recently dealt with is growing a team and just realizing like, oh yeah, like I wanted to stay away from too many meetings, but then realized that was, again, being led by me, and I steered us into too few meetings, and realizing like, okay, we don't need a daily stand up, but we needed a weekly, all hands check in, and then realizing like, oh, okay, this is really paying off. So I totally agree. And I love the part about having a structured agenda. And for the people out there who get scared by some structure, like, don't worry, you can still have some flexibility. But yeah, just saying, hey, these are the 3 things we have to cover every time. And then the rest of the time, could be flex or whatever. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, and then our teams are done very similar to like a Silicon Valley style, where they can choose their own vacation days, they can choose their own sick days, and as many or as few as they need. Especially during these times, we actually don't know if somebody is going to have a health issue or somebody in their family. So it's also something that I feel like, to give people that flexibility also gives them that sense of responsibility. It's up to you to manage your own schedule. You're an adult, and I totally trust you.
Gotcha. I like it. So Sydney, you've done a lot of work in automation and marketing. So kind of before this stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you have anything from that period of your life where like you've really applied it now, or you see like, because I'll let you talk through it, but you worked at a scale probably a lot of people don't see. So when I think automation, I'm thinking like I used Zapier to like connect an email system, but like, that's it. Is there stuff that you think would apply, or maybe small business owners or entrepreneurs can really benefit from?
Yeah, so I did everything from Marketo and Salesforce and all of those kinds of systems that are meant to provide support for marketing and sales, right? And so I think that for for a long time, those kinds of companies were always geared towards, big corporations and everything. But when it comes to small businesses, entrepreneurs, what's important to keep in mind, and this is going against the things we were not supposed to say at the time, was if you are not big enough, do not use these softwares.
Yeah.
They're not going to help you be more productive. So I think it was Bill Gates who said it best. He said that if you are inefficient, adding technology and software and tools will expand your inefficiency. If you are efficient, then adding tools and software and technology will expand your efficiency, right? So it will only give you just a bigger headache if you don't have, like, let's say 6,000 leads in order to really be using these in a good way. And it could be that, business developers or salespeople are telling you, you must have this, you are a dentist, and it's not true.
Yeah.
So I would say when it comes to the small businesses, make sure that you actually really need these things and understand why you need these things before you're paying like $1,200 a month for any of them.
Gotcha. I really like that. I like the understand why, and I think that that's a good one to put into practice, along with having that result. What's your end game that you're looking for, and making sure that the tool supports that. So
yeah.
Okay. So going back now, kind of bumping around, but talking about VenturX, this is interesting. So with that, you're helping connect the disconnect, if I understand it correctly, right? So startups that had issues getting in front of investors, and then investors that are kind of having their own troubles finding the right startups.
Yeah.
So that to me is interesting, but then it got me thinking, like, recognizing this, how could people kind of apply this idea to themselves? Do you think, like, can you do self-analysis and be like, how can I apply this and recognize like where the gaps are with like my systems and things like that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, I'll answer this in an individual and an entrepreneurship kind of level. So for an individual, we actually have something called a 360 review. So this is one of the concepts that, we learned in our MBA, and I do put it into practice with my team, which is you review yourself. Just try and write it down. Try and write down a realistic review on yourself. So your strengths or weaknesses, what you wish to do, the person that you want to be, or the goals you want to achieve. And get somebody you trust to then review you, right? So in the case of my team, obviously it would be the manager, would be me, reviewing that person as well. So, and then your colleague or a trusted friend, right? So if you have all of these people around you, people who support you, people who know you very well, reviewing the things that you're doing, reviewing your goals, and providing you good feedback, it increases your emotional intelligence. It increases your EQ because your overall awareness is then expanded, right? I'll share something more personal about me. So one of the things that I thought I was a genius at until like a month ago, was that my neighbor, who's known me for 15 years because we went to school together, and also one of my closest friends who's I do workout with. So they both agreed on this thing that I had a huge blind spot about. So I said, I had these new friends and it was really bothering me. I wasn't sure if I should like be around them as much anymore, just because they're always late and I am so busy. So I can't really afford people to be late. And then I was like, how is it that you are, so on time for things? And then, you know what my neighbor said? He goes, I'm only on time for you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, you do know that people adjust to you, right? And I'm like, I had no idea. I thought I was a genius in choosing specific organized people to be in my circle and in my life. He's like, no, nobody's like that. And so this was like blowing up my self-awareness. And because I've never done this review personally, which I probably should have, I never knew that I was that rigid. So then people adapted to me to be in my circle as opposed to the other way around, thinking I was like, yeah, we are clicking. Like, no, they're just clicking with me. And so
that's really interesting. I did something similar. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a unique ability. It was like a workbook, basically just kind of finding out like, hey, what are your strengths, and like what they and like working your way through it instead of just going directly to it because we all think we know. And yeah, that was really eye-opening for me. And after that, I was like, oh, well, it's no surprise I didn't like being an engineer in a company. Like that is totally not what I should have been doing. And like, not that it was terrible, but it's like, oh, in hindsight, like finding out where we really shine and how we actually operate. Yeah, that's really powerful stuff.
Absolutely. And when it comes to business, you can just look more into the numbers, right?
Yeah.
So what VenturX does as the tool, it calculates your conversion, your engagement levels, usage and retention, how customers are coming back, and of course your finances. So calculating all of those things actually gives you a good 360 review. So you can have it with a software, you can have it with a mentor, you can have it with just applying for certain, let's say, awards or programs or accelerators of similar companies that have been, let's say, the same number of years as you, a similar industry, those kinds of things. So you're really being able to compare to your peers. And then you're going to see if you're slowly growing or you're slowly dying, because you're really doing one or the other every day.
Fair enough. Yeah, you're not standing still. All right. Well, we got time for just a couple more questions here. And so I always love this. It's not that it's so important, but I think everyone likes this. Is just like, what are your actual tools? Like, what is it that you're using? Or do you have what do you use, a specific journal, or is it just a piece of paper? Do you use a certain to-do app? Like, what do you use?
Yeah, so for my journaling, I went back home last Christmas and I robbed my mom of all of the exercise books that she bought for us when we were like in middle school. Every single one from her cabinet was in my luggage. So I would use any kind of journal. I don't really have a specific one. It could be a Hilroy exercise book. It could be a really nice moleskin. It doesn't really matter to me as much. The important thing is that I have different sizes and different ones in each of my purses. So right. Then I would always have one and I don't have to find printer paper all the time.
Like
so you might not.
But you're also setting the environment, right? No matter where you're at, you've got one. It may not be the same one, but it's there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then in my home, in my personal life, I have a Google Home. So I do talk to it like it's a person, and it schedules things for me, schedule events for me. It tells me all the information that I need to know most of the time. And then I like to use Calendly and these kinds of links where you send them to people and then it can help automatically schedule things for you. So I think that that's really, really helpful to do, especially when you have a lot of meetings and then they have the option to reschedule right away if they really need to. That's also really helpful for them too.
Yeah, that is a great one. I mean, well, that's how we got this podcast interview going. So love it. All right. Well, last question. So you can't recommend your own book. You can, but we'll definitely look down on you for it. But what book or just piece of media do you find yourself recommending the most to people right now?
Well, like I said, Tim Ferriss is absolutely one of my favorite authors. So I really recommend his book, 4-Hour Workweek. And another really great one is Peter Drucker. And that is called The Effective Executive. So if you haven't read that one, I highly recommend it. I think that your audience would love it. One of the things that he does best is writing an insane amount of books about working well, about improving corporate structure and everything. So I think that his work is also just marvelous.
Definitely. I will check that out. I have heard of it, but it was not on the to-read list, so I'm going to bump it up a notch here. So awesome. Well, thank you, Sydney, so much for coming in and sharing all of this. I know we went all over the place and covered a lot of ground. So, where can people go to find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, so you can find out more about me on LinkedIn. So you can definitely reach out and connect to me. So please, if you do, send me a note that you've heard from this podcast. That would be awesome. And then also you can find us in all of our social media. So on YouTube, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So we have YouTubes and Facebooks and Twitter for VenturX as well as for the book, which is How to Have a Good Day. So we have it for both.
Outstanding. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Real World Productivity Podcast. If you know someone that would enjoy this episode, please grab the link and send it via email, message, or whatever means works best. Now, if you're looking for more ways to increase your productivity, time management, and team building skills, be sure to go to productivity.academy/resources to find out what tools, cheat sheets, and services can get you started and make the most impact right now. For those who want to make fast changes and want to save dozens of hours, I highly recommend joining the 14-day Productivity Foundation Challenge at productivity.academy/foundation challenge. This 14-day challenge takes minutes per day, but will help you develop or improve your daily review to get more done with less distractions and loss of focus. You'll also get over-the-shoulder directions for setting up an automation to save dozens of hours and the process for deciding what else you should automate and how to do it. And if you're serious about continuous improvement and you know that productivity, time management, and team building will impact every area of your personal and professional life, join us in the Growth Automation membership. Find out more at productivity.academy/join.